All right, so this is going to be a short video, but I wanted to share a little blues rhythm thing that I picked up years ago and I just haven't put in a video yet. Super easy to do. It's a little blues rhythm that you can play using just 2 fingers. And actually you can take the same shape and just go down 1 fret from the 1 chord to get to the 4 chord. You go back to the 1 chord, then you go up a fret to get to the 5 chord. And there's also a little 2-5-1 turnaround that you can work in, a little jazzy thing using that same shape. All right, so let's break down this 2-finger blues rhythm. We're going to be playing this in the key of A, but you could easily transpose this and play this in any key. It just depends on how you visualize that starting chord. So I'm thinking about the A major bar chord. Now, we're not going to be playing this chord, but I'm picturing that in my mind. So I'm picturing that 5th fret as my root fret or my home base. This is the E shape out of Caged, even though we're playing the A chord there. Now, you don't have to make the chord, but just picture that, get that in your head, so that when you play this, which is your 1 chord, you can see what to attach it to. You attach it to that root fret that you bar there when you make the bar chord. So when I'm playing that, I've got my ring finger on the 6th fret 3rd string, and my index finger is on the 5th fret 4th string. And if you can play that, you can do the whole thing. It's that simple. And I use these 2 fingers, ring finger and index finger. Some of you may want to use your index finger and middle finger. It's really up to you as to which fingers you use. The reason I use these 2 is when I go to the 4 chord, sometimes I'll put my middle finger down there and play that dominant 7 chord. But anyway, what we're doing is actually taking a little piece out of the dominant 7 A chord here. So if we look at our A bar chord, going back to that, and I take my pinky away, you can see what happens to that chord. It goes from an A major chord to an A dominant 7. And if you look at these 2 strings, the 3rd string and the 4th string, that's all we're playing when we do that. So that's where that comes from. It comes from that chord. That's our 1 chord. Slide it down. That's your 4 chord. Now some of you are saying, how is that a 4 chord? How would just sliding that down become your 4 chord? Well, look at your 4 chord. If you're playing the dominant 7 4 chord right there, if we play just strings 3 and 4, you're taking those 2 notes right out of that chord. So you've got 2 notes out of the 1 chord, out of the A chord, 2 notes out of the D7 chord, and then you can go back to your 1 chord. And so that's really the whole thing. It's just, there's your 1, 4, back to your 1, then you go back to your 4, quick change. And now watch this, for the 5, you just go up 1 this way. So it's the same thing, back to your 4, back to your 1. It's that simple. Now one thing you can do when you're using this, you can play it as a rhythm or a lead. Actually, you can work that into your lead playing, but I like to use it as a little blues comp. And then I'm just playing some licks out of the minor pentatonic scale in between there, but you can see what you can do with that. All right, so now let's look at one other way we can use this little 2-finger chord. You can also use it for the 2-5-1 turnaround. So, and typically the turnaround, you got your 5 chord, you go to the 4 chord, and then you go back to the 1 chord, right? That's that's your typical 1-4-5 blues. But sometimes you'll hear something like this. And all I'm doing for that is I'm coming up to the 2, which typically would be a minor chord, but we can make that a major chord. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm playing a B7, B dominant 7, and then I'm going to the 5, which is a E7, and then to the 1. So it's a 2-5-1. Actually in jazz, it's a minor 2-5-1. So I'm gonna add one thing to that. So instead of starting with the 2 chord, I'm actually gonna start with the 5 chord of the 2 chord. I don't wanna get, too in the weeds here. I'm gonna show you the quick little way to play this here in a minute, but I just wanted to explain the background behind it for those of you that are interested. So that's called a secondary dominant chord. So the chord we're playing, that 2 chord, is a B, but the 5 chord of a B is an F sharp 7. I know that's confusing to some, but that's really what's going on there. So we play the 5 of the 2, then the 2, then the 5 of the 1, and then the 1. You can see a little pattern there. It's the same shapes repeated in both places. So instead of playing those full chords, I'm going to come up here and play that same little 2-finger shape, but this time I've got my ring finger on the 9th fret, 3rd string, and then my index finger's on the 8th fret, 4th string. And watch this. I can walk it down chromatically, step by step, fret by fret. Back to the 1 chord. Now it may sound a little weird when I play it like that, but here's what it sounds like in context. Let me play the whole thing. You hear that? It's a walk down, but what we're playing is that 2-5-1 turnaround, but you have the secondary dominant chord that happens just before the 2. If you want more information on that, I do have a lesson on that. You can go to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page and do a search for the word secondary. I can't remember the number of it off the top of my head, but if you look for the word secondary, you'll see that lesson on what a secondary dominant chord is and learn more about that. All right, so there's one last thing that I forgot to mention, and that is you can play this in multiple octaves. So if we were playing in the key of A, you could take the same concept. Actually, it's the same shape and everything. So if that's your 1 chord, if you play it up here, that would be your 1 chord in a different octave. Same shape. We've got my ring finger now on the 9th fret, 1st string. My index finger's on the 8th fret, 2nd string. And if you want to connect that to something in your mind, a chord, I think of that as the A7 triad, like that. So it's just strings 1 and 2 out of the triad. Same thing though. That's your 1. There's your 4 chord. You go back up to your 1. There's your 5. All of the stuff that we learned down here would apply in that spot. So that gives you 2 places that you can play that little rhythm comp thing. It's really fun to work into your playing because it's so easy to do. All right, hopefully that gives you some ideas for this, and we'll see you in the next video for something new.